Hey, hello there, Monster Rangers, and welcome to another edition of the Steam Crow Show. I'm Dawna, and I'm happy to be stitching with you today. And on our lesson for today, it's all about the focus. So let's get our thread ready and let's get stitching.
Steam Crow Show! Steam Crow Show! Steam Crow Show!
All right, Rangers, it is time for some excellent focus. The handout today has a bunch of information for you. It has that lovely drawing like it always does. It has the information about the root marrow. And this time I added a conduit. We've got instructions and a few new stitches. So let's go over this really quick. So like I said, this lesson is all about focus. What we want to do is focus our energy for the new year in a very positive way. So I gave you a root that is peppermint. It is for extreme focus. And I took a little artistic license here. Peppermint doesn't grow with peppermint candy at the top, but I drew some in because I thought it would be fun. The marrow is mace, and I totally forgot to write down the word mace. I will write that in for you. All right, so the root is peppermint. This is called mace, and it's actually this part right here. I'm gonna grab a pen. It's this part right here that's around the little black eyes, and this is a fleshy white part. So I'll show you. Let me bring this over. So this is the almost finished practice. So this is what mace is. So it is actually nutmeg, part of nutmeg. So nutmeg grows with this white fleshy fruit around it. And then inside is this red stringy thing that goes over it. And then it has the seed behind it, which looks a little black. And sometimes when the mace is growing around the nutmeg seed, it looks like a skull or a face. And so I drew it so it looked a little bit like a face. But mace is slightly different than nutmeg. It can be a little bit more floral. But it is used similarly to nutmeg, and that promotes focus, concentration, self-discipline. It is great for study and great for meditation. And I think all of us need a little time to be able to just pause and focus. And I added a conduit. Now, a conduit is something that is optional in a spell glyph, and there are only 3 conduits, and the spirit is one of them. Now, you're probably going, well, with all this focus, why didn't you pick, like, the mind? Because it's the mind, the body, and the spirit are our conduits. But I chose spirit because your mind's being focused and drawn in enough. I felt like your spirit needed a little focusing and a little uplift because sometimes it can wander a little bit. So I added that to it. So that's why there's a big seeing eye in our excellent focus, is that big conduit. Our new stitches this week are all about couching. Yes, so it's actually a really cool stitch. It can be a little bit awkward. We are laying down some thread and then we are tacking it down with another color thread or the same color thread. So we're going to do both today, and we're going to do a couple of types of couching. The first one is just couching, and that's going to be our border to make it look a little bit festive. And the second type of couching we're going to do is Bokhara couching, and that's here in our mint leaf right here. And the reason why I chose this is because if you've ever looked at a mint leaf, it's kind of rough and rugged. So I wanted it to reflect kind of that bumpiness to it. Now, this is my practice, and I practiced first with just some satin stitches, and I decided, you know what, I didn't really care for that. Although there's a lot of movement to it, I wanted it to have a little bit more structure and a little bit more texture to it. So I added this, I changed it over to this stitch. We're doing French knots, yay! We're learning the cable stitch, and that's going to be for the center of the eye. This around the eye is also couching. This can be a little rough, but we're going to make it through it. We are doing a stem stitch. You've done that. We're doing the split stitch. You've done that. Satin stitch. You've done it. Most of the stitches you've done except for the couple of couching. So I say we go ahead and get started. And as usual, I am sewing on a different color fabric. My practice was on black. If you want to do it on black, go ahead. You can also change the colors and put it on any color you want. I am sewing on white, a white dish towel today with a lovely red stripe. So I'm excited to do this. All right, my needles and stuff are prepped and ready. I'm going to take a drink. Today I am drinking fizzy water because I've been running around like a crazy person. And I had a lot of errands to run and dealing with the goblin boy. So I'm drinking water. No tea today, but it'll be okay. All right. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to start off with this hex border, and we are going to do some couching. So I'm going to grab my red, and it's just a number, size 5, bright red that I like to use. It's a very nice thread. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay down a long stitch. So I'm going to come up at this point right here. And I'm going to pull it all the way through. Again, I'm using a knot on the back. And then what I'm going to do here is I am going to actually make one long stitch. Now you can do it, so usually couching is done where you lay this thread along the line and then you tack it down with another thread. What I did for mine was I went to each corner and I took one long stitch in each corner. Now that can make a mess on the back. So you know what? We're going to try it the proper way. So to make this look like candy, or to go with our red and white theme, I'm going to take my thread. I'm just going to lay it down. I'm going to get it out of the way here. I'm going to get the rest of this out of my way too. All right, so I am going to lay my red thread just right along the line. That's all I'm going to do. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my thread, my white thread, up on the bottom here, right next to my red. I'm just going to bring my white up, and what we're going to do is we're going to take little tacks. We're actually going to, they're just tiny slanted stitches. You can make them straighter if you want to. I'm going to make mine at an angle, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go just above, right above, make sure you can see this. I am going to go right above the, it's below, excuse me. I'm going to go right below this thread and then come out right above it, but I'm tacking down in the fabric. I'm not just loosely wrapping. We're actually tacking this red thread down. So I'm just going to take that little stitch. There we go. There. All right. And then I'm going to do that again. All right. And all the while, what I'm doing is I am keeping that red thread held down with my thumb. And I'll tell you the hardest part about couching is that you are tacking down at regular intervals. So you're just taking up a little piece of the thread, or the fabric, underneath that thread, the red thread that we've laid down, and all I'm doing is little stitches. The hardest part is regular intervals. It is. Once you get the hang of this and you get the swing of it, you're in a rhythm, then it's easy to do that regular interval. If you are a perfectionist and you don't like it when it gets irregular, you can put little marks in your drawing. so that you can mark it, but you're going to have to make sure that you mark it off to the side so that you know where to take your stitches. Or if you're like me, you can just go for it. Now, the key thing is that you are pulling tight, but you don't need to pull so tight. All right. So what I'm doing again is I'm just doing regular intervals, and this isn't looking too bad. I would recommend a hoop for this. Makes it a little bit easier to hold the thread, I think, when you're a little irregular there, but when you are sewing without a hoop, sometimes, especially with couching, sometimes you can lose track of what it is that you're doing. So all I'm doing is sewing at regular intervals, just like so. All right, I'm going to sew right through this corner, just like that. So when I get here, then all I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down my thread, and I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to do this all the way around so that it looks like this. All right, when you're done. Now, these ones, I started off really irregular because it had been a long time since I've done some couching. And so I did get a little irregular, and then it got a little better. So it does get better, and it always gets better with practice. Remember that. It always gets better with practice. Now, if you want to make it extremely random, you can just put as many stitches down as you want. But it looks nice. It's a little festive and a striped candy cane. So that is couching. Pretty simple. You're just going to lay that thread down as you go around. And when I get down to the bottom here, I'm going to, since my red thread is still connected to my needle, I'm going to take that down right to the back and then tie a knot, and then I'll finish the last round of white thread. Now, you can use the exact same color of thread. You can always use contrasting thread. You can use metallic threads. There's a lot of different types of thread that you can do. And this is also a great technique to use as a fill if you ever need a large area to fill, or you wanted to fill the background of the eye in. You can use couching all the same color to fill in the background of the eye. It goes pretty quick. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take this. I'm going to do one more stitch, and then I'm going to tie a knot in the back. And there we go. I'm going to tie a knot in the back, and we are going to move on to the mace. So you can see on the back, all you're going to see is that white thread. I want to catch a little bit of my fabric. There we go. I hope you guys are having a good day today. All right, let me move this off to the side. And let's go ahead and get to the mace. Now I'm gonna leave this thread still connected to my needle, and the reason why I'm going to do that is because I want it, I would like to finish this one and make it look nice. So I am going to take this, I'm going to show you a little trick. I wound my extra thread around my 2 fingers. I'm going to twist this into a figure 8. All right, and then I am going to take my needle and let's see if I can do this. My mother-in-law Vicky taught me how to do this, and it is I just popped it out. It is the most wonderful thing. So if you have thread that's like a really long piece of thread left over. There we go. I stuck my needle through it. So this is going to be off to the side, so it's not going to be hanging down for me. But I can tack it down like that with that needle. It's holding it down and it's not going to get all yucky. And you can do this in your, like in a little book or on a piece of fabric or whatever, if you have extra thread and you don't want to waste it and you don't want to have to rethread it. So this is a good technique to keep thread that's already in a needle. All right, let's move on to the mace. So the first thing that I learned when I did the mace was that I started from the inside and I went out. Most of the time when I've sewn in my life, I always kind of go from the outside in. I always start with the outline, and I think that's because of how I draw. You know, you're drawing the outline and then you're doing the fill. Well, since the drawing is done, now I get to just focus on the fill. I'm going to start on the middle in the inside. So we're going to do the eyes first, then go to the red part, that's the actual mace, then go to the satin stitch around the that fleshy part of the fruit, and then we have a little outline. So this stitch is all it is a satin stitch, and it should go pretty quick for us today. And my knot escaped me. There we go. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up in the back, bring this forward, and since I'm using a size 5 thread, I pulled on the knot. Since I'm using a size 5 thread, this is going to fill in pretty quick. It'll probably take 3 or 4 stitches. If you're using a thinner thread, then it'll take just a little bit longer. But the spots on the seed showing through, which is what this is, the little eyes, are nice and small, so it'll be pretty quick. And I am going to travel to the next one. Actually, we'll do the mouth. I hope my thread off to the side isn't too distracting for you. All right, and then we're going to travel again. And the reason why I'm traveling is because the red is going to cover the back of this. We're going to do the split stitch around this, or back split stitch. I do both. That's going to fill anything in. It'll tack down that traveling thread in the back. So that'll make it nice and tight. All right, there we go. All right, there's the eyes. So real nice and quick. I tried to give you guys a quicker design this time. Last time I got a little carried away, and there's a lot of stitching involved in that, the aloe vera plant that we did last week, but it looks so good when it's done. Oh, it's beautiful. And I left a big loop. We're going to be okay with that because we're going to tack that down at the red. All right, move the black down. I'm going to grab another needle that is ready to go with the red. And what we're going to do is we're going to back stitch the, or split stitch, sorry. We're going to split stitch the mace. And this is that red area that goes around it. So I'm just going to pick a starting point. All right. And then I'm going to go to my right and I'm going to take a stitch and I'm going to go just past my thread. So you can see my threads in the middle. Like that. I'm going to go like that, and then Now my thread's on top, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to split the stitch that we just made. There we go. And then I'm going to keep doing that. And what I'm going to do is I am going to go around the outline first. Okay. So just keep going around the outline. So when I stitched the red of the mace, what I did was I went around the whole outline, and then I went around again. So I went around and then around, and then I came down through the middle of the mace around the eyes. So that's what I did. This dish towel is a very loose weave. So I need to be careful that I don't snag my stitches and pull threads out. All right. It's been awesome creating these lessons for you. I'm really looking forward to the Conjure Guard handbook coming out. So that's got the story of Tanta Tina in it and a whole bunch of instructions and ideas and a few patterns in there for you. And I'm going to keep doing these lessons. We're going to go on a little bit of a hiatus right now because it is the end of the year and it's time to spend some time with family. And after we quarantine, of course, because we're filming in the end of 2020. We're crossing our fingers and hoping that 2021 goes smoother and goes in a positive direction so that we can see each other at camp again. I'm excited to stitch with you at camp so that we can make things. I can help you with any of these lessons when you see me at camp. So I just did that first loop, that first round. There we go, came undone. All right, take a stitch. There we go. There we go. And all I'm doing is I'm filling in all around those spots. And the reason why I did it this way was because I had an idea for how to stitch the fleshy part of the mace, because I wanted it to be nice and neat, and I really thought the satin stitch would be perfect for it. Let's see, how are we doing on time? We're doing okay on time. I'm gonna keep going with this so that we've got a couple of good layers in there. There we go. Oh, that's getting a little less splitty. Let's split that. There we go. Making sure I'm not sewing through the extra fabric here. I don't know about you, but sometimes that happens with me. All right, and since we're so close, over there, my little spot got really close. We're just gonna go around this way. There we go. So remember, just like in drawing or anything that you create, what you're doing is you're making decisions. You're making decisions as to which direction you want to go. And you may be going in a different direction. You may go in a different direction than I do. You may go vertical stripes, go down that way. It all depends on you. You make the decision and how you want that structure, that pattern to look. I felt like it needed to be around like this. So this is my decision making. Lucky for us is that you can change these things and make it a little more yours. You can decide whether or not you want to make it in a circle or straighter or whatever. Or if you choose to do satin stitch, you're welcome to do that too. There are lots of different things that you can try, and it looks like I am just going to sew this whole thing with you. So I am actually going to split this right there and fill in the little area. And let me see. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, we're gonna go right here. Just like so. There we go. And it twisted again. I've been moving so fast, it just wants to knot. There we go. Perfect. Just a few stitches left and our mace will be complete. Remember, when you get those little twisty knots, make sure that you don't pull hard, because sometimes you can lock it into a knot. You want to pull gently, and then you can usually undo it rather quickly. Because all it is the thread that's twisted. I'm going to bring that up there and fill. All right. It's not perfect split stitch, but yeah, that'll look good. All right, let's knot this off. See what I mean, how it covered the back? I'm going to weave this through here. There we go. Just like so. Make it harder for the thread to come out. And I'm going to put this off to the side. And now what we can do is we're going to work on that awesome satin stitch that goes around the outside. So let me show you this again. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to have a nice shape. So I wanted that satin stitch to go in, you know, like it's radiating out from the mace. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at the outside, and then we're going to go down right next to the mace. Come out at the outside line, go down by the mace. That's what we're going to do with our white. So I prepped all my thread today and I forgot to put knots at the end of everything. All right. So what I'm going to do is I am going to come out at the outside line right here. And then I am going to go straight down right next to the mace, just like this. And then I'm going to go do that again. Now, I'm going to tell you, when you're doing curves, you want to make sure that sometimes you might have to go down in the same spot rather than going right next to it. Sometimes you need to share, like right here. I'm going to just share that same spot that I just went down. And the reason why is because you're curving. And the thread's going to get wider on the outside, but it needs to be a little narrower on the inside. So sometimes you need to squish your stitches a little bit extra on the inside. So we're just going to go all the way around this. Just like so. Oh, sorry. All right, so again, you're going to follow that all the way around, and I just make nice long stitches as we go up. You guys don't need to see me stitch all the way around. I'll show you the finished one. I'm pretty happy with how this looks. And so once you're done with that, if your outside edge gets just a little wonky, you're going to cover it up, so don't worry about that. So back here, back to our finished one, what you're going to do is you are going to take that split stitch and you are going to just make an outline with a nice, this is a size 12 green that I have by Valdani. It's variegated, so I wanted a different, slightly different color green than I used for the stems here. You can use a nice little bright green, but what you want to do is just take that split stitch. So it's the same stitch we used to fill the mace in, but this time what we're doing is we're doing a nice thin outline. So I thought that was a nice finishing touch. All right. So the next thing we need to learn how to do is we need to learn how to do the other type of couching, and that is the Bokhara couching right here, and that's in lines. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna knot this off and come back to it later. Let's do that. All right, stick this back in to my pin cushion. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab our instructions over here. Move things out of the way. There we go. So we are going to be doing this, which is the Bokhara couching. All right, basically it's a satin stitch, but what we're going to do is we're going to do those small little tacks in random areas. It looks almost like a little basket weave. So regular intervals again, not just random areas. The smaller the leaf though, the more random I get. So it's easier on a big leaf to be very regular, but sometimes with those little tiny leaves, and we have a few of those in our design, what we're going to do is we're going to do our best, but we're going to make sure that we tack it down as we go, and I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so take another drink. I'm going to grab my green here, and my green is a size 8. It is not variegated. It is just a nice plain green. I believe it is the same green I was using on the aloe vera of last week. All right. And since you already know how to do split stitch, I'm not going to worry about doing the stem or getting that started. But what we're going to do is we're going to do the leaves. All right. And so I'm going to start off with this one. And the reason why is because it has most of my fabric out of the way. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come up right up at the top. The tip of my thread is stuck. There we go. We're going to come up right up at the tip of my leaf here. And what we're going to do is we are going to make a very, very small, just little satin stitch up at the top. Just like so. All right, I gotta move some of the stuff out of the way. All right, and then I got that one a little big, so I'm gonna make a tiny one on top just to make it look a little bit nicer, more like a tip. There we go. All right, so I have my 2 tiny threads up here. I'm gonna make another one, just a nice satin stitch, and I'm going from the left side to the right side. If you're a lefty, you'll probably go from the right to the left, which is just fine. All right, and I'm gonna do one more. So some of these starting stitches up at the top of the leaf are just straight up satin stitches, and the reason why is because, okay, we're good. The reason why is because it's so small, we're not going to worry about tacking them down. They're almost the size of those little stitches anyways, so especially in the beginning. But this next one, we're going to go ahead and put a stitch in. So you can do it 2 ways. So you can take your needle down on the outer edge and then bring it up in the middle just below like where your stitch is going to go. So you can kind of see that. So just below right there, you can bring it up like that. Or you can, since we're using a hoop, excuse me, we will probably, I usually stab. So see how my thread is now coming out in the middle? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull the satin stitch, not tight, I want it a little loose so that I can pull it down and I can tack, make that tiny little stitch go over it, just like so. You know what, I think I'm gonna give us some extra light here, just a moment. Let's turn that on. Okay, let's see how that goes. So what we're gonna do is we are going to, I apologize, I should have turned that extra light on earlier. I'm going to make another stitch. I made that little tack right in the middle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make my long stitch right here, just like so. Okay. And then I am going to tack down on, I'm going to do 2 tacks on this one. So I'm going to do one right here, and I'm going to do one right over there. And this is probably a little hard to see, so I have an idea. Let me take these 2 tacks, and then I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to grab some thread. I'm going to show you. All right. I'm going to put this down because this is very tiny. All right, let's go over to this other side where I have lots of practices and lots of starts. And I am going to grab we'll grab white. Okay, since I already have that ready to go. I'm not going to do green. I'm going to grab white because it's a little bit bigger. So basically what we're doing is we're taking a long stitch that goes like this, okay? Just like this. And then what I'm doing, I apologize, I hit the camera again, is I'm going to come up in the middle, right below the stitch, and then I am going to tack it down right here, just like that. So that's how that stitch looks. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the second, another line, another satin stitch. I'm going to make it just a hair longer because my leaf will probably be getting wider. All right, so I'm going to go like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to stagger my little tie downs or tacks, okay? I'm going to put one towards the outer edge on the right, And then I'm going to come over here and put one on the outer edge on the left. And I apologize for not using a hoop, but this was kind of a last minute decision because that thread is so tiny, and since it's the same color, it's a little hard to see. This is a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to see, but you can see that I have one tack down here in the middle, and then I did the next 2 tacks. So then I'm going to lay another line down, and then I'll do 1 tack, and then I'll do 2, and then 1. Or sometimes I might end up increasing to 3. It depends on how wide your shape is that you are going to fill in. All right. I don't have to knot that because I'll probably pull that out later. Let me put my needle back, and let's go back to our tiny green. All right, so let's get everything in its proper place. So I did the 2 tacks on that one, so now I'm going to go from left to right again, just like so. And this time I'm just going to tack down in the middle. Now, it can get messy when you're using thread this tiny. You can lose track of how many little tie downs you've done. And this is a leaf. This is in nature. So it's going to be okay. We're not doing something that depends on it being perfectly regular intervals. So if it gets a little off, like some of your little tacks or tie downs are close together, they're right below each other, whatever, don't stress out about it. The key thing is that you're tacking those stitches down, and it's creating an interesting texture for your leaf. It's a nice, easy fill to do. It's great for a leaf. It's great for a large shape. Like I said, again, you can use contrasting colors if you wanted to. So go ahead here and here. And there we go. And so we're going to keep going until this leaf is filled. Now, I chose a really big leaf to do, so I'm going to stop right there, and I will come back and finish that. What I really want to get to is I want to get to this eye because we've got a brand new stitch in here and some new couching to do. All right, so, oh look, I have made a huge mess in the back. That is okay, I can fix that. So, with this little thread, sometimes I take too much. It is best not to take too much thread. You want to do no more than an arm's length, and of course I took way more. So I took a really long one. Excuse me. So don't do what I did, then you won't end up with a mess in the bag. All right, we are going to move up to the eye because there's some new stitches there and I want to really get to those. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go back to my white, and I am going to fill in the highlight of the eye first. And this is going to be real quick. It's just going to be some satin stitches. You don't have to do anything fancy. We just want to get that highlight in. All right. I'm excited to do these 2 stitches. They are, well, the couching is challenging. It took me a while to do, but I have decided that it is worth the effort. It is definitely worth the effort. All right, so what I'm doing, it's also a pretty cool way to make it look like a peppermint candy, the striped peppermint candies instead of the whirligig kind of looking ones that I have here. All right, and I'm going to do one more stitch right here. Just like so. All right, so my highlight is done. We're going to knot this off. Put this off to the side, and I'm going to grab another fabulous red. And that one's empty. Let's try this one. There we go. All right. So this one is a modified cable stitch. So let's grab our handout again and take a look at that. And this cable stitch is basically back stitch, but in a round. So it's going to look like this. And normally when you do cable stitch, you sew the top one and then you sew the bottom one. Oh, my light just went out. That's okay. All right. And then you sew the top one and then the bottom one. And this time though, we're going to go around in a circle. So we're going to make it look more like back stitch, but we're going to overlap them kind of like bricks, if you've drawn bricks with me before. So, or ever drawn bricks where you kind of overlap them. They'll go, the first row goes right next to each other and then the second row overlaps. It makes it stronger. It makes it look more interesting. All right, so I am going to go right next to that highlight, and I am going to take a small stitch, and I am going to just follow the outline. So my first stitch, and then I'm going to leave a space. I'm going to come up right on that line. And then making sure that I don't have a knot. And then I'm going to go back right at the edge, right here, right at the edge of that, just like so. Like that. And that's what I'm going to continue. It's back stitch. So we left a space. This is a stitch that we haven't really done since, I know we did it with the very first project we did with the raspberry. And what I'm doing is the stitches are right next to each other. I'm not splitting them. All right. Now, if you feel more comfortable with split stitch, you can definitely do split stitch in here instead of cable stitch. But I wanted a different texture, so I chose cable stitch, which was a new stitch for me. And of course I take it as a new stitch and throw it into a circle rather than it being straight, but that's okay. I like that. All right, pull that up. We're gonna go around here. We're doing all right on time. Most of the stitches you have already done. For these videos are just a way to get you guys started with the stitch so that you understand what it is that you need to do. All right, pull that. I'm using a really long needle for this one. That's okay. All right. I also like doing this stitch and the couching that we're going to do around it because it's going to make it look nice and round. All right. Good. All right. So there is my first row. So now what you're going to do is you are going to offset this. So the second row, and I usually just go back the other way around. So I'm going to come right here and I'm going to go halfway in the middle of this stitch. So I came up right in the middle of that last stitch that I just did, and I'm going to go down in the middle of the stitch next to it. So that's how I'm offsetting those stitches. And again, I'm going to come up through halfway through a stitch, just like so, and go down right next to it. So I'm not splitting, I'm doing a second row so you can see this. So I come up in the middle of this, I'm using that first row of stitches that I did are my guide. All right, I'm just sewing, I'm trying to be as neat as possible. Now, if you take too tiny of a stitch, which is entirely possible, I've done, you may need to incorporate more than one stitch, which is just fine. You can overlap a few more, just so that you get this nice kind of rows that happen or occur. Not rows as in a smelly rose, but rows as in straight lines, like crops grow in a row. We stand in a, in line in a row. There we go. This is looking good. Well, I'm happy with it, I should say. You guys give me a good excuse to try all sorts of new techniques so I can expand my horizons, and I can teach you and you can expand yours. This is super awesome. All right, so I'm going to keep going with this cable stitch all the way around my eye until it is filled, just like so. All right, and I'm going to keep going, but we're running out of time here, so I really want to get to this couching right here, and so I am going to knot this off, and again, I'll come back to it, just like I always say. And I really want this stuff out of the way. All right. Okay. So I'm going to put that off to the side. I'm actually going to, no, okay. I am now going to grab Baby Pink. And this is for the outline. Okay, so again, we're doing this long line. So on my original, when I did this, I told you that I did the outline, and what I did was I made 6 long stitches and I tacked it down, and so I went from one corner of the hex to this corner of the hex and made one, and then I came up in this one and went down in this one, and what it does is it makes almost like a pentagram on the back. It made these long loopy things which can catch on things if you wanted to use this as a dish towel. And since this is going to be on a dish towel and it'll be used, what I don't want to do is have that really messy back. I want to try and keep it as neat as possible. So I don't want it to catch. This is practice, so it's okay that I traveled. Plus I got to try something that I don't know if it worked or not. For this part of the eye, what I did was I picked a spot and I brought my thread up and I went around it and then I brought it down. So I did one loop and then I did a second loop and then I did a third loop. So the hard part is that when you put the red tacks down, it pulled all my pink thread, and it took me probably a good 15 minutes to get it all laid back down again because it pulled it through. And so I had to figure out how to get everything back because I had sewn 3 rows basically down, thinking that was going to be the smart thing to do. I don't know if it was a smart thing to do until I try it a different way. So this time I'm going to do the more traditional way, which is you come up and you use one long piece of thread, and we're going to go around 3 times. All right, so I'm going to bring this up right next to the eye, highlight, okay? And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this down, okay? And so I am going to just set my needle down, and I'm just going to use my hands. And I am going to lay my thread around the eye, and then I'm going to lay another row around the eye, and it can be a little loose. You don't want to make it super loose, but it can be a little loose. What you don't want to do is make it too tight. I think I made it too tight. All right, there we go. All right. All right, there we go. That's looking better. Now I'm going to lay down my second row. There we go. And yes, I'm going to go around 3 times. Now, there we go. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop right at the same spot where I'm going to carefully bring this up. So there it is. I'm going to stop right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this down, and I am going to actually bring my needle down to the back. Just like so. Careful not to pull too tight. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab a red. There we go. Oh, that's a shorter one. Okay. I'm going to grab my red, okay, and I am going to very carefully bring my red up through the same hole that I went down with that pink, and then I am going to tack it down right here, just like so. I'm going to hold all that in place. All right. Hey, that went a lot better than it did the first time for me when I did this. So you can see how that tightened this down and it made it a little bit nicer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go at even intervals around. I'm going to bring my needle out at the outer edge, and then I'm going to go down in the pupil of the eye. All right, so bring this up and then bring this down. Wow, this is going a lot nicer. This is, I did not expect it to go this well for me. This is pretty cool. All right. And notice I'm being like timid and gentle, and I'm bringing this around, and I'm focusing. That's what I'm doing. I am focusing, and this this definitely makes you focus. So I'm bringing this around, and I'm just going to go ahead and finish this for you so you can see what it looks like. Done. Plus I want to finish it because I'm just tickled with how well it went. Thank you for making me do this again. That actually went a lot better. So tacking it down using one long strand actually worked pretty well. That one got a little close. That's okay. There we go. I figured this whole thing was a peppermint, so I thought it would look pretty good with peppermint stripes around the eye. There we go. Bring this up. All right, bring those together. So where's my pink? I can pull, see how I can pull that last bit down so we can make that a little tighter. There we go. Oh, I'm going to use the back of my needle. There we go. Tack that down, and one more. And we'll tack that down. There we go. Haha. All right. So there is the eye. All right, finished. I think the next time I do it, instead of coming up at the same hole, what I'll do is I'll come up. I would come up. Sorry, I got really close there. I would come up right here on the outside just to cover that up just a little bit more, so it doesn't look like it has a weird end to it, but it doesn't look bad. That went amazingly well for what we had to do, because it's a little complicated. So remember to lay it down, go ahead and use one long string, and then tack it down. I think that's going to work really, really well for you. All right, now we're an hour and 2 minutes into this tutorial, and luckily you guys have all done the rest of the French knots, but I'm going to review a French knot with you just in case. So, French knot. All right, I'm just going to grab a red, and we're going to go for one of the peppermints. All right, so on your handout, there are X's. And what I did was I made those X's on purpose, because then I know where I'm going to either put the red or I'm going to put the white. So one is going to be red and the other one is going to be white. And I always tend to put the X in where the red is going to go. So you are going to do French knots in two places. You are going to do French knots in the peppermints, and you are going to do French knots around the eye. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start right near the middle. All right. And I'm going to bring my thread up, and I pulled my knot all the way through. Let's try that again. Pull that up. There we go. And remember, you're going to hold the thread in your left hand. Take your needle in your right. You're going to wrap it around twice for a big loop, once for a small one. and you're going to put it down right next to where you came out. All right, just right there, and there you have your knot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this area with little French knots. And I'm doing 1 loop French knots. That's what I did. Instead of doing 2, because I don't need giant loops. I don't need a giant knot. You can do 2 loops here around the eye to make it more interesting. And all I'm going to do is 1 loop. There we go. Loop it around. And remember, French knots are a lot like those bullion stitches. Those bullion stitches, they're going to work and work and work, and then you're going to have an epic fail. Do not feel bad if you have an epic fail. All right? Epic fails happen with French knots. They just do, especially if you have a whole bunch of threads sticking out underneath your design like I do right now. So don't worry about that. And you can always fill in if you leave too much of a gap. You can always add a knot. All right, so we've reviewed French knots. So let's take a look at my almost finished one. All right, so we did our eye. Our eye looks really good. Actually, I think it looks a lot neater than the one that I did. So excellent. French knots we reviewed. You guys can remember to take your pick. You can do satin stitch, big satin stitch if you want your leaves to be more like this and jagged on the outside, or you can use the Bokhara couching and you can stitch here. You're going to use French knots around the eye. These are just straight little lines that went around the eye. We're going to satin stitch the crown, which is nice and easy. And right here is the stem stitch. Shall we review the stem stitch really quick? We can do that. So I like the stem stitch. It's quick, it's easy. I've got lots of thread underneath here. Let's just pull this off to the side. I am going to start at the left of my eye. You work this stitch left to right. And this is the one where you're going to go at an angle. So you're going to slant your stitches and you're going to come in just below the line and come out just above the line, kind of in the middle of the stitch that you're going to make, just like that. And what these stitches are going to do is they are going to lay right next to each other, and they're going to make a really nice outline. The smaller the stitches, the tighter the curve will be. The bigger the stitches, the more you're going to see like a little jagged. So there is the stitch. It's a little easier to see on my black. You can see those little stitches just falling in line right next to each other. And then what I did, I went left to right for the bottom part of the eye, and then I turned my design over and I went left to right for the top part of the eye. And I think that looks really great. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this gets you through your end of the year with a great project. Go ahead and get out there and focus and have fun. All right, Rangers, and so this concludes another edition of the Steam Crow Show. I hope you enjoyed this stitching hour. I know I sure did, and I had a great amount of focus. It was really, really great, and I hope you did too. You guys, thank you so much for all that you've done for us, and thank you for joining me in these videos. We hope that you have a most excellent Ranger Day. Ka!